The old hypothetical horror movie chase scene scenario. Do you scream or do you run? Hypothetically, if you have someone chasing after you, is not to scream. Save your lungs and run. So screaming, the act of screaming, especially if you're in response to something that's stressful, is only going to add to the stress that you are experiencing. So your lungs are actually a part of your cardiovascular system. And when you are in a situation, in an environment that is triggering a stress response in you, you might have an increase in your heart rate, maybe an increase in your blood pressure, and that's all to help your body to move quickly away from a predator, for instance. And that's also going to impact your lungs as well. Now, your lungs and your breathing rate is going to increase with your heart rate. And so this overall stress response that you're having in response to any type of a stimulus or the environment itself, let's say you're anticipating something happening, so your heart is racing, all of this is increasing that respiratory rate. And this is all having an impact over your overall body and also your overall stress response. Now, if you were to scream, now you are adding a layer of stress to your overall stress response. If you can control the screaming and instead channel it into running, now you actually have a more controlled use of that stress response. This is, in a way, the core of how our stress response works and why it works. Because if we were to come across a threat in real life, we need to be able to run, to get out of there. So I already have a love of the blood and gore that goes into a human body. I know that sounds odd, but I already have a love for blood. It's just so cool that it's this liquid tissue that is so unique, and the way that it circulates throughout your body, it's unique in different areas of your body. It's containing something that might be different based on where it is within your body. And so as your blood is circulating, and your heart is designed to help support your blood. So your heart is designed to move that blood through your body and through your lungs. So your lungs are part of your cardiovascular system. And within your lungs, there's an entire series of steps that are occurring where that blood is moving through your lungs until it gets to a point where it can then have a very important gas exchange, and then once again bring that blood back to your heart so it can circulate back through your body. Now, some of the coolest things that we've been able to identify over time is how our entire cardiovascular system is responsive to our environment and to stressors in our environment. And that can be a physical stressor, it can be a stimulus, it can even be psychological, emotional stressors, it can be social stressors. It can be the literal stress of walking through a haunted house and you're anticipating something jumping out to you. So that anticipation of a stressor is already increasing your cardiovascular output. All of this is this response that you are always having to your environment and to changes in your environment. And those changes in our environment are sometimes within our control, but oftentimes not in our control. So what we do have, though, is the ability to control certain things. In this case, your stress response, you do actually have the ability to start to gain control over how you're responding to stress. And in this case, it starts with breathing techniques and focusing on your breathing techniques, focusing on exhaling out in a controlled manner. So if you are in that kind of a situation where it's a high stress situation, what you would want to do is focus on breathing in that slower, controlled, focusing on the exhale, slow and controlled. Try not to overdo the inhales. You want to really focus on the exhales, allow the breathing techniques to calm you down, and then channel that stress response into something that is physical within your body. So whether it is physically moving your body in a way that is slow and steady to try to calm your nerves, or if you're in an environment like, let's say, a haunted house, and that stress response is because there's something coming at you, then you can channel that stress response into the physical movement of getting away, which is in reality why we have a stress response to begin with. Now, all of this, these are different things that you might be doing for entertainment, right? Going to a haunted house is a form of entertainment, and watching different horror movies, watching action movies that are really like keeps you on the edge of your seat. Maybe it keeps your heart racing the whole time. Maybe your mind is going the whole time, and it's something that's a very immersive, very high active type of entertainment experience. Watching sports, especially if your team is on the verge of losing a game or something, where you're on the edge of your seat and you're watching and you're like holding on to dear life, hoping that this all works out in a way that you can take a breath and calm down. All of that is a stress response. All of that is environmental stimuli, things that are occurring around you in your environment and in your just overall life and what you're taking in, that is adding layers to what you were already experiencing as stress. Now, for a lot of individuals, the degree of stress that they experience on a day-to-day basis is already very high, and it feels a bit unmanageable at times. So one thing that you can do to try to mitigate or try to control or lower that degree of stress that you may feel on a day-to-day basis is to really start to tune in and pick out which types of entertainment is actually triggering a stress response in you, and then start to taper yourself off of those. So if you spend your free time watching nothing but horror movies or action movies or sports that are getting your heart racing, that entire length of relaxation time was actually spent in this degree of stress response. You're just increasing your body's stress response that entire time. So to truly focus on lowering those layers of stress in your life, in your day-to-day life, and really allowing yourself, allowing your brain, allowing your body to fully recover from the stress that you do experience, you really need to start to taper yourself off of those forms of entertainment that are actually adding to your stress response, that are triggering a stress response. The fact that your lungs are part of your cardiovascular system is actually extremely important to keep in mind when you are in situations where, if there is an added layer of stress around you that is increasing your heart rate, increasing your blood pressure, you're having an increased stress response, you do in fact have an ability right then and there to try to control that as best as possible. And that's through incorporating a breathing technique. So focusing on your breathing can actually help to mitigate that stress response that you're having, and to help you in a way control for the racing heart rate or the rise in your heart rate and the increase in your blood pressure that your body is responding to, because there is something outside of you that it needs to respond to. You don't always have the control of what it is that is in your environment that you may be experiencing a stress response to, but you do have the ability to try to control your breathing. And in that way, you're kind of indirectly controlling then your overall heart rate, your blood pressure, and how your body is responding to this stressful situation or to this stressor in your environment.